We are recording.
Hey, everybody. It's with great pleasure that I am finally interviewing the prolific William Ramsey. I was just telling him that he's a man after my own heart and that he does a lot of reading. He reads, interviews a lot of authors, and, his wheelhouse of everything from true crime to the occult to the parapolitical, it's definitely something that's a big part of resistance recovery. And I guess what I'd like to start with, William, is how did you come to do this? What was the spark of your interest in looking at things behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes pretty far back. I was always interested in good, theories or people talking, about bars or whatever, kind of good stories. So I think I was willing to listen to, I had a susceptibility to listen to alternate views early. Then I went to DC. I was in DC from 95 to 98, and I saw a completely different kind of world than what was being put out into the media. So I was kind of within the bubble of, the loop or whatever of DC. And
what were you doing in DC?
I was studying to be a lawyer for 3 years.
Where were you?
I was at a law school in DC.
No, I mean, what law school?
I'd rather not say.
Oh, okay. I just asked because I grew up there. I grew up on Capitol.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I was in, I had stayed in Northern Virginia most of the time. I was in Clarendon and Roslyn, but it was very easy to get to DC. The metro works really well there. So,
just growing up there, I can say that you very quickly realized that appearances are all smoke and mirrors. Even as a kid, you can tell.
I believe it. And there's you run into these old families and old sensibilities. I was from California. I was born in Nebraska, but I realized that the East Coast and some of these older families from Virginia, they operate and think a lot differently than maybe people in California do, where it's more of a melting pot. But it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. Anyway, I worked briefly on the Vince Foster death, who was found at Fort Marcy Park. I worked for a lawyer and delivered kind of which was eventually actually added onto by the district court in DC, the DC district court, into the back of the Star Report eventually.
Wow.
So, and I actually delivered those to all the congressmen, all the senators. So I'd been around. My wife worked for a congressman. So, I kind of saw DC. I went to the Clinton inaugural in 96. And so I was kind of just an outsider, just trying to figure it out. But it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. So I discount a lot of the corporate media from there. So then, the internet kind of grew up, and I was always researching and reading and followed a lot of stuff having to do with the Foster case. But that was, just years worked as a lawyer, and it's just kind of living my life. And I was really researching 9/11 at one certain point, 2004. I realized that 9/11 was not what they were telling us. And so that really sent me into kind of a long research. I was following a lot of researchers, variety of different quality and character, but I was definitely not following the corporate line. I thought the Bush administration was a horror show, is a nice way to put it, I guess. But so it was during that time that I kept seeing these numbers. There was a guy by the name of Captain May, who unfortunately has passed away. He was a researcher, but he kept noticing the same numbers too, but didn't know what they meant. Why is 11 so predominant in these events? Wow. Yeah. So that was really it. So why is this here? There's an over predominance of 11s going on. I don't know what that is. So I just kept looking around, and just through reading, I kind of came across a couple things where I saw this 93 associated with Crowley, and I said, why is 93 Crowley's number? And so I was looking into Crowley, and then it was just really obvious that 11 was a fixative point. So that really was okay, then who really is Crowley? I know what people are telling me about Crowley. I've listened to the song by Ozzy Osbourne called Mr. Crowley, but I just had a superficial notion. Well, I was really willing to read a lot of the biographies. There's a lot of biased biographies about Crowley out there. written by fellow travelers, people who admire Crowley. I'm definitely not. I'm on the opposite side of that.
Right.
So
hagiographies, really.
Right, much like his autobiography.
Yeah.
So,
right.
yeah. So, I mean, they leave a lot out too. What I realized once you go back and look through his original corpus, like what he wrote and put together, some of these biographies are, they're occulting. An occultist actually is a good way, I think, to put it. So I read a lot of that stuff, and then that was kind of like opened my eyes when you look at 9/11 and the numerology, and even the numerology of the World Trade Center, and then that Crowley was really an elitist and a spy. And you kind of just see these overlapping kind of ideas and numerology and kind of elite experiences that I think was involved in 9/11. And that's what led me eventually to publish my first book, which was Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order, because I don't think people they weren't really putting that together. People had heard about the New World Order, but at that time, I think that was kind of a novel.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're the only researcher who got to Crowley from 9/11.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I think that there's been more Crowley kind of researchers since I published my first book in 2010, it seems like. But I was kind of out there on my own. Most of these other people were Crowley, they're Thelemites.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And there's still Thelemites out there today. I actually was following one on Twitter with like 15,000 followers. So they're around. They're actually still kind of a growing movement or kind of a religion. I don't think they have an expurgated, spoonerized version of Crowley provided to them. They probably missed a lot of the stuff that I put in my book. But so that was really that was my first book. I actually was printing it out on a printer. So I've had a 3-ring binder.
Wow.
I didn't. Yeah. So it was really kind of like they're out there somewhere. Those first original copies of Prophet of Evil are out there somewhere. So that was 2010. And really kind of, I pushed the book originally to publishers in the Christian community. I thought it was a Christian book. And they were trying to work me so bad. Like I kind of like was shocked, like, oh, you'll get 5% of net or something. I'm like, 5% of net, I can put this up on Amazon and get 70% of what I sell. So I really that would kind of started me on the self-publishing route, which is less common maybe as it is now. It actually was considered back then kind of like you couldn't get your book published, but I didn't see it like that way. I saw it like you are working your authors, and that wasn't for me. So I'm glad I did it too. So I self-published that. They used to have something called, it was something space. So Amazon bought it and absorbed it, but it was, I can't even remember the name of the company, but you could use that and get it out on Kindle and distribute it and get copies of the book. So that was my first book. And then I was researching my second book, what was intended to be Children of the Beast, which was going to show Crowley's influence. And as I was researching that, I came across a prosecutor interviewing a guy by the name of Damien Eccles, who was involved in the West Memphis 3 murders. And that's kind of a famous true crime case. And I was intrigued because I had seen Paradise Lost back when it came out in like 94 or 95. And I just didn't think about it much. I just said, these guys are guilty. And I'd heard that there's this whole move to get them out. So that was another kind of thing where I had to unpeel this, like the Gordian knot, like what is the truth of the West Memphis 3? Because everybody was saying at that time they were innocent. And I'm saying, well, they were found guilty in court. Why do you keep saying they're innocent? Because they went through the legal process. And I've realized that at the beginning, there was a lot of problems in there. Obviously, there's still a lot. So I stopped writing Children of the Beast and I wrote Abomination, Devil Worship, and Deception in the West Memphis 3 murders. And Crowley, it really is involved in a lot of that. So during that video that I was telling you about the prosecutor, he had Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice on his desk, which I would never see in a court of law. Like, it was just, it's such an anomaly. I was like looking at that going, what the hell is that doing on there? Turns out Eccles is a Thelemite. He was a member of the OTO in Arkansas, an admitted one. You can actually look up this article. You can just type it into your search engine. It's called SK931. And it is an OTO letter that describes Eccles and his thelemic. And what I learned to find and what I learned from Crowley is a lot of these guys will cross in between different occult orders or just crew cult orders. Crowley said he had so many badges and insignias and stuff that it would bury an elephant, because he joined everything as well. Anyway, so that was the West Memphis 3 book that came out 2012. They threatened to sue me if they took my book off of Amazon. I got it back on. So that was kind of like, punching the hornet's nest. So then, I kind of covered that. I interviewed a lot for that book. And then I published, I think a couple years later, Children of the Beast. That was my third book. And so that was, my first 3 books. And then what else have I read? And then I've just published one last year. But then I did 5 documentaries. I did a couple really lousy documentaries back in 2010 that were an atrocity, really. One was called Occult Hollywood, and the other one was called Prophet of Evil, based upon my book. And then I upgraded those, and they're on Vimeo. So I have 5 documentaries on Vimeo. And then I kind of got tracked into this whole smiley face killers phenomenon. That was kind of made 2 documentaries on that. My smiley face killers phenomenon book documentary was 3.5 hours long. You can see it on Amazon. Wow. And I thought that was another thing where kind of like I had to peel back the onion to try to really figure what was going on. I thought it was kind of an urban myth. I remember hearing about it, and the 2 guys who started it, and they were, Gilbertson and Gannon wrote a book called Case Studies in Forensic Drownings. But it was when I started reading it, I found it was a much broader event. I met a lot of researchers. The fortune one was a guy by the name of Jim Smith. So he was, I think, the director on that documentary when I put it out in 2017. And I had really good reviews from that. I mean, it was just, it's a micro budgeted, all my books are micro budgeted documentary. But I think the fact comes across that there's a phenomenon of young men, college-age men out at bars disappear, oftentimes for a long period of time. Some of them are gone for like 40 days. One comes to mind. His name is Dakota James in Pittsburgh. So that was my documentary 2017. And then I did a follow-up to that called Smiley Face Killers, The Global Slaughter Continues, because it was a globalized thing. It's happening in the UK, it's Europe. The English-speaking countries are far easier to figure out, but I found some in France, Netherlands, very suspicious. And there are some in Europe. Austria, Germany. So that was my second documentary. And then I did the 3 documentaries. I upgraded Prophet of Evil. I upgraded Occult Hollywood. And then I did a documentary on Children of the Beast. And then I published that book last year called Global Death Cult, which the subtitle is Global Death Cult. Hey, nice. Global Death Cult. Order of 9 Angles, Adam Waffen, and the Slaughter of the Innocent. So that was kind of like my entry into kind of right-wing occultism, farthest right-wing occultism in the underground. And then I really just updated that like about 3 months ago because so much has happened. There was a bust. There was an FBI informant. There's a murder in the UK. There were a lot of court trials that had conclusions on some of these far rightists that were online causing trouble with like Solomon and Krieg division and fewer Krieg. So, and then I kind of write little articles. Like if you go to my website, you can see the little articles that I've done on a variety of different subjects. I'm on the West Memphis 3. I wrote about Marlis Perry, some occult crimes, and just whatever kind of comes to mind. So, and then I started my podcast. I worked for Ed Opperman as a producer for 3 years, the Opperman Report. Mm-hmm. I had my first interview on, I had her on just recently. Her name was Corrine Hutzabout on my YouTube channel from 2016. I just had her on recently. She's a great guest, really fascinating, who knew a lot about pedophilia and the Dutroux case. Oh, wow. She was in Belgium, in that part of Belgium. She has like 20 books that should be published or should be translated in English, but they're all in Flemish or French or something like that. But anyway, the point is that like I started interviewing people for my YouTube channel. I was working for Ed at the same time. Then they stole my YouTube channel. As far as I'm concerned, Google did. I can't even get into it. Oh, wow. And then I kind of transferred everything over and really started a podcast. So I took my interviews, took the audio off, then started a podcast, and I kind of been working more on that. And it really was a vehicle to sell my books. Initially, that's really what it was. It was like, I can reach more people and sell advertising or let them know my books and videos are out. And so then it's kind of grew. Like, according to Listen Notes right now, I'm in the top 1% of podcasts in the world. So there's a decent amount of people listening to it. And I've had a lot of different authors, like you said, a lot of different authors, things that were kind of pretty idiosyncratic, things that I'm interested in: espionage, history, book writers. I think that the writers of the books make great guests. I find it more edifying, and the subject matter is kind of condensed. It's not like a conversational style where we talk about everything. We just kind of talk about their books. I just give underhanded pitches to them and let them go. And I think and it's kind of an introduction to the book. So you've got somebody who's an expert on whatever they're talking about, first person, hopefully.
Sure.
That's kind of what I've tried to emphasize on my podcast, and that's titled William Ramsey Investigates. And I kind of came up with that because I was so disappointed with other investigative journalists either being corporatized or politicized. So you almost never hear the words liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican on my interviews. Like, I just don't want to talk on those terms at all.
No, I really appreciate that about your work. Well, as a listener, I just would like to note a couple of things. So I'm 58, and I'm a product of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and got acquainted with Crowley at a young age. And I read the Book of the Law, and I read Theory and Practice and all that. And you would read those sections in the Book of the Law where he basically talks about, child murder. And I can just remember that I had a revulsion to it, but there was something in me that just let it slide. I didn't explain it away that it was a euphemism for something else. And it was because Crowley was such a countercultural icon. And, Jimmy Page and Sgt. Pepper's and on and on and on. And it's really remarkable that now, and I would say you're kind of leading the vanguard of this, there's a series of researchers who call him out and say, no, he actually meant what he said, and then some. And then the other thing that your work does that I think is just remarkable, I think this was really evident listening to David Livingston, and that's a fantastic interview, by the way.
Thank you.
But that there are these sort of right-wing occultism, and there's even sort of a right-wing financing and backing of much that passes for the New Age. Right. And that is, that's wild. And I think it really needs to come out.
Yeah. Look at the Bush family. They're right-wing. They're supposedly in the Christian Republican Party, and they are not Christians. So there's money coming from all things. But I think Dave Livingston's Order Ab Chaos really covers the kind of old money, bloodline, literal fascism of the right and what they've been up to and how far it really goes back. I think his work is really fascinating. But that was actually when I talked to him more recently, my old YouTube channel, which I can't get into. Our earlier interview about that book has like 10,000 listens. So that was like on that site, one of the most listened to interviews. But yeah, I think.
And the thing that he does that's so crazy, and I think Jason Horsley does this too, is he shows how there's also at the same time this sort of weird progressive line, so-called progressive in eugenics and in the sexual revolution. And that meets this kind of 1960s libertine ethos. And I find myself going, no wonder they called it the counterculture, right? They were being serious. They are going to counter the culture.
Yeah, it's about culture creation, Fabianism, slow change. The 60s was not a slow change, but what's really fascinating is how many of those guys have the money, the Mellon family and like behind Leary, they have the money to really influence and want to change culture. What was the Horsley's book? Prisoner of Infinity, how occultism, Fabianism
Right.
shaped them. I forgot the full title of that, but I've interviewed him. I've interviewed him about a lot of his books, but I think that's it. I mean, it's surprisingly, and I do think that it really is a pyramid where a lot of these secret families are puppeteering the left and the right. So I think that's evident. Yes.
And that's like super disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, and the culture creation. So like, think about the 60s, how many people are involved in that, and that like the Fund for Human Ecology was a CIA front. So many CIA fronts in these big schools that were influenced. I think that Leary was an FBI agent or a contact. I think he said that he was a CIA agent, now that I remember, because I covered him in depth in Children of the Beast, because he thought he was carrying on Crowley's tradition of kind of sex and drugs. Yeah. So he was at Busada, where Crowley was with Victor Newberg. He was there in Busada with a drug dealer, Babbitt. I forgot his name, Bobbitt. But that's when that's when Leary said, our lives are following the same path or whatever. There's some kind of weird mystical connection. And he actually had Crowley's I Ching cards, and he was known to throw tarot. So that's like one of the secret things about Leary. And he's this counterculture guy. There's really amusing, I mean, you want to talk about both sides. There's really amusing debates between Leary and William F. Buckley, right? They're like, I think there's one there, and you have Leary who loves Crowley, and you have a guy who's supposedly a Christian who was a member of Skull and Bones, who was sitting in a tomb letting his brethren piss in his mouth, like literally, right? And they're talking, and they're just talking for, this thing. And I'm pretty sure that Crowley's ideas somehow have influence or infiltrated, or there's a book of his somewhere in Skull and Bones. Like, I think that they have a secret library, so that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, yeah, and then you've got things like Alfred Kinsey's infatuation with Crowley, and the whole sexualization of children through, these researchers, and then it becomes, part of all sex education programs that prepubescent children are sexual, and these connections are so they're so relevant, and they're so immediate to what's going on in the world today.
No doubt, it's still happening, and the normalization. And he was a super abusive, Kinsey was, but an important key was he was friends with, and it's such a strange connection, with Kenneth Anger when he was young, and right. He and Anger went. What's that?
When he was young.
Yeah, when Anger was young, and he and Anger went to the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily, and there's pictures of them together, and it's remarkable. And Kinsey coveted the diaries of Crowley. That's what he really wanted. But and it's really crazy, because Anger, you can see the connection between Anger to the Manson family through Bobby Bouzoulet, to the Stones, to Led Zeppelin, to the son of John Lennon was hugely influenced by Kenneth Anger. Some of his videos, are exactly like Lucifer Rising, with the advent at the very end. The alien arrival was what takes place after the ritual. Strangely enough, Kenneth Anger's at the end of that ritual, he's taking little human figurines and drowning them.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. Go watch Lucifer Rising again.
And how has your work been received?
I mean, I think I'm definitely was never a part of the corporate regime or anything. I don't think I could ever have really published any of my material. And it's Children of the Beast has like 750 footnotes, so I didn't like make anything up. But I think after my experience in 2010, I knew that my route was going to just be independent. Mm-hmm. So I think I had like some of my work. I mean, you can look at the stuff online on Amazon. Like, I got a bunch of 1-stars from West Memphis 3 groupies, but then some there's a list. I should just read it into my podcast or broadcast of how many people thought my 2017 SFK documentary is excellent. But people like my research. Nobody has ever said wow, this the way you put this book together, or your your ability to put a book like what's the word? Like my skills as a documentarian or actual like book compiler are not great. So the writing is good, but I'm definitely, I put it all together myself. All that artwork is mine. So it's not come from like a professional artist or anything like that. So,
But you
so
don't
I've,
have,
I've got a leopard. Yeah. What's
but
that?
you don't have people coming out of the woodwork attacking you.
Oh, not physically, but I get all kinds of attacks and stuff. Like I get threatened with lawsuits, but I really think that my experience as a lawyer was very fortunate because you can kind of see through who's serious or not. Like people have threatened to sue me, but I said all this stuff that I have is just I didn't make anything up. I can show you where I read it. So I'm not just trying to malign people. I'm really just kind of a historical researcher. I don't have like these idiosyncratic flashes of I'm just going to go make something up. These are just things that I found that are extant. So
No,
yeah.
I just figured you're probably stepping on a lot of toes.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think I had one. There was one where when I first after the people I pissed off. There's a bunch of Crowley lovers who hate my guts. So there's this one guy who follows me around and gives me 1-star reviews. And then after I came out with Abomination, it was blowing dust off of the whole. It was uncovered. I think it uncovered the network occultism that's out there. And so I had one where like, I'm sorry it's on short notice, but could you come meet us here tonight? It was like a total setup. I was like, no way. I'm not going to go to some place in LA. No way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that probably, yeah. So, I mean, I lived in DC for 3 years. So I picked up some very curious lessons, the police seeing a lot of different things, if you know what I mean. You kind of learn, I mean, yeah, that place is crazy. Blackmail was real back then. It was bad. I mean, inside of DC, it's a huge power game. And,
yeah, it is. And it leaves you wondering if the power structures of DC, Hollywood, and the corporate world are all running on sexual blackmail.
Right. No, I think, yeah. I think for a long time, elements have. And I think that was the whole Corinne Hutz about when I was talking to her recently. Everything that was happening there in Belgium was a lot of sexual blackmail of the total elite. So, you don't really know which way it ran, like, because they were just all involved. So they all were corrupted. And I think the same things happened here. I mean, it goes back to whatever happened in Nebraska. What do they call that? The Franklin scandal.
Franklin scandal.
So sure. That's the earlier one. And then the lawyer ran kind of his own. So Epstein and Maxwell are just the most recent iteration of the pedophile scandal. They used to have like gay scandals, but now being gay isn't
right.
A career killer. So now it's just purely you're trying to get somebody for pedophilia.
Went from adultery to homosexuality to pedophilia.
Right, very much. Adultery back in the day, that would destroy your career. It really would. There was stories like it's hard to think about this today, but like the Kennedys were adulterers, but they didn't want it to come out because it would just destroy the whole Camelot image that they were sexual, all over the place. And so there's a lot of reasons why they didn't want information like that to come out. But today we just would think that's so quaint, like, oh, you cheated on your wife, so what? Mm-hmm. But back then it would have ruined Bobby's career and John. Now we know that John Kennedy was like, what's the word? A sybaritical, libertine,
right? Priapic.
Priapic, good word. Yeah, good. Very good. You know where I heard that word was a description of J. Paul Getty. So Paul Getty was a priapic character. Like he would get like 10 prostitutes, like crazy stuff, like 10 prostitutes, and just spend as much time as he could, just like and was the head of the whole Getty clan was
and
yeah.
totally implicated in a lot of this elite deviance all over the place. Yeah,
Tons of it. And there were stories. There was this. I mean, you got to take everything with a grain of salt, but I think that Crazy Days and Nights is pretty reliable, and they told stories about J. Paul Getty that are off the charts. That he had basically a harem, like he could afford it.
Yeah. So in this era that we are moving into now, where there's this growing suspicion of the elite, their designs, their machinations, and that suspicion seems to be beginning to go across the political spectrum. Do you think that people are becoming more sophisticated about these topics, meaning that they're reading work like yours or Jason's or Livingston's more, or is the puzzle getting put together in a way that it hadn't before?
I think so. I mean, that's a great question. I think that the internet has allowed people to compare notes kind of figuratively. Like, you know what somebody else has written, so you can build off that. So I think that there is a very hardcore research community. Like, that's one of the benefits of like kind of putting myself out there is I've met all these great guys who are just, they're grinding it out. They're just researching everything. Like John Brisson, we've read the documents. Like so you can see the Finders Cult was totally like McMartin, which actually I'm going to talk. I have a talk today. If you have time, listen in. I'll try to get it live. You can probably listen to it on Twitter. But we're going to talk about the witch hunt narrative by Ross Chait. But getting back to your question, I do think people are getting these secret things together, the secret agreements, the secret societies, the secret tendrils, the puppeteering that maybe they couldn't see before. So like the secret society networks are very real. And so I think people they just saw these and they're keeping it quiet. So that's the whole thing about it being secret. So, but people are like, why are all these people from Yale? Why are all these, what's going on with this? And so I think the answer is yes. And I think it's just a research community, like they're building and building and building. So like an exemplar would be the Kennedy assassination, right? November 22nd, was it 1963? But people built and learned from researchers, so Mark Lane and then Salandri and all these other characters. And now today, people who really want to know can get a pretty accurate picture of what happened. And I think that in these other ones too, these pedophile networks and the Brownstone, Compromat, corruption and stuff, I think people are seeing more and more of that. And I think people are fascinated. I mean, at least on my, from my experience, like they really want to know about Epstein and Maxwell and really what's behind them.
Right.
I think I sense that in my show. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that there's also increasing sophistication about the misinformation that's spread through all this stuff?
I think so. I think that people are doing a better job. And I think that, you are, I think that, yeah, like I watched like, not the, 9/11 event and you could tell it was trying to be compromised. Like people were trying to get in there and spread dis and misinformation. Right. So I think that people are much more subtle they're more sensitive to it and they don't take every hook, but there's still people out there. I mean, I don't want to tell names, but there's people in the alternate community who are clearly infiltrators. They're not kind of independent, kind of objective researchers. So you got to really be careful. Yeah.
I would argue there's some of the larger names too.
Well, I mean, you got to be careful about saying those, but yeah, I mean, I have my suspicions as well. I mean, know who. Look, do you know how much the FBI spends on informants per year in the United States? Do you want to take a guess?
$2.5 billion.
It's huge. It's like that. It's really 500 million, but that's still, you can buy.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And I mean, a lot of these people would sell themselves people out for nothing. So that's just one example of the payment. You don't know what's going on, but you look at what happened January 6th. A lot of those guys were informants. A lot of those heads of the right wing thing.
Oh yeah, and that was just such bad theater. I mean, how could so what I noticed was like when 9/11 happened, it took me, I think, about a calendar year before I even really questioned, box cutters and buildings, building 7. But when this recent thing that I'm not going to mention the name of it for YouTube's sake happened, I didn't buy it for a day. And I don't think, I'm some whiz-bang researcher. I just believe that the level of cynicism and doubt that is in the body politic now, a lot of people just don't. It's like we're reading Pravda in Moscow in 1987 or something.
Right. It's incredible. I mean, it's incredible that Trump, what Trump called his social media site? Truth. Like, wow, do you not know history, man? What's going on with that? I wouldn't touch that with a 40-foot pole. But yeah, I think I was naive about 9/11 too. I probably didn't start questioning it till 2003 or 4. But when, there was just things that I should have picked up, like, okay, everybody get back to work. We had this terrible event. Like, I should have just gone, what the hell are you saying that? But I think that how many people didn't take the shot? A lot. Mm-hmm. I think it's like almost, 60 or 50%. I think I had something. The test said that I had what they say you have, but I never got some card that says I have natural immunity to get all of us to herd immunity. And that should tell you everything you need to know about this event. It's totally structured and fake. So
scripted.
Yeah,
heavily scripted.
Yeah, no, there's a good book. I wish I could remember it offhand, but it was really about how far this goes back. It didn't come out of the ether. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was worked on, and people were thinking about it.
Did you interview Ed Haslam? Was that you at one point? The guy who wrote Mary's Monkey?
No, I should. I would like to interview him, though.
Well, I read that just a little while ago, and what was wild about it is it goes to 1960. It takes you to these not big research universities, places like Tulane, and they are researching cancer, and they are taking these tumors from rats and mice, and they're grinding them up, and then they're hitting them with a particle collider or a particle. Anyway, it's one of those things, and it has a lot of industrial uses. I learned all that in the book. And then they would take the irradiated tumors and they would inject them in monkeys to see if they cause cancer. So it sounds like, they're trying to weaponize cancer, what have you. And Fairy and all these characters are in the book. But what's so wild, what is so trippy is 1980, with the AIDS epidemic, Anthony Fauci tells us it came from monkeys. So how far back does this narrative really go?
I don't know. You don't know what's coming out of the deep state. I don't know. It's pretty scary. Like I'm just not impressed by these people at all. I don't think a lot of those people are really working for the interests of the American people, which is really against the purpose of why they're supposed to be working in those positions.
No.
So
that's so true. Any new research coming along? Anything?
Well, I've just kind of been putting things together. I've got some things on the horizon. Just kind of working on the broadcast, but I definitely have some things that I'm trying to finish and get done, and send out. So, I've learned not to really telegraph anything that I do for a variety of reasons. People will rip off your ideas, man. There's no question about it. There's a book by, I think that publisher was Trine Day, of the book you were talking about, Mayor's Monkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they put out a book after mine, after I put out Prophet of Evil, called The Most Dangerous Book, whatever. That strangely has a lot of my research in it, or if not most of my research from Prophet of Evil in there. But they took out a lot of stuff, and yeah, it's pretty, in my opinion, pretty ugly. So got to really watch out.
And when your interest in crime seems to always be weaving back to these other themes. Was that is that by design in a way?
I think it really came because people wanted to talk about it. I think that there was something like, it was the Lanning report that says there's no occult motivated crimes,
When
which
was
is
that?
total. What's that?
When was that?
The Lanning report. Oh, he's actually well respected from the FBI, but I can't remember when he published it. But I did an interview with Ken and me about the Lanning report. We criticized it, but I think that that's complete nonsense because there's so many occult influence crimes out there that the Lanning report. I think, is just the crux of his argument is that there really aren't anything occultism associated with crime. It's a cover for pedophilia rings or something like that. I have to go back and reread that. But so a lot of my stuff about the occult was really kind of trying to expose it, So I
know
think that's what
that sounds almost like J. Edgar saying there was no organized crime in America.
Right.
About that.
Right. I mean, there's so much occultism out. Like almost every music video, or a lot of these musicians are into the occult. A lot of these politicians are. So it's kind of silly to tell you it's not when you can see it in front of your face. So I think that's really kind of why I wrote those books, is really to counter these fake narratives. These.
Yeah, well, I gotta admit, the West Memphis 3, the movie, I mean, that thing took me hook, line, and sinker. And I kind of would read up on Damien Eccles while he was in prison. He was doing that thing that you said. He was getting involved with Zen Buddhism and Catholic mysticism. And then when I read, I followed a bunch of your interviews on it, I had to really look at, one of these funny things is I'm beginning to think that spiritual growth now has to have something to do with deprogramming yourself. So you really, at some point, you have to say, man, I'm as much of a sucker as the next guy. And to the extent that I think I'm not a sucker, they've got me,
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And your West Memphis Free stuff couldn't have been more like that. I mean, it preyed on a certain kind of sympathy, a well-meaning sympathy for these poor, redneck kids in Arkansas who get framed by these lazy, corrupt cops and DAs, and then they enjoy the support of the Johnny Depps of the world. And what could smell bad here?
Right. It's a good story. I mean, the PR guys put together a good story. You can't blame them. I mean, I was one of the most naive persons on earth up until 25. I did what I was told. I went and got educated according to the paradigm that you're supposed to. And I had to really re-educate myself. It's really kind of odd, but something happened where I had to go back and kind of process everything I learned. And a lot of it was baloney, just a lot of the stuff that you're getting in high school and the stuff I missed. But so I wish I could say, like, I'm 53, so I wish I could say, like, I didn't have that, this is S, this is Shinola talk. I had to kind of learn it myself, but there's a lot of S out there. And
I don't want to get too personal or anything, but did this cost you personally when suddenly you went from being the guy who was sort of playing by the rule book to questioning 9/11? Did the people?
I think it cost me just working under the whole Vince Foster thing. That's really where it started. It didn't start. So, I mean, my life would have been a lot different if I had just stayed away from that whole thing and not really read about it or hung out. Like, I used to hang out with Patrick Knowlton, who was at the park, John Clark, these guys. Like, it gave me a whole different outlook. I've done a lot of interviews with guys around that, Dave Martin and Hugh Turley. I've done a lot of stuff about that, and I talk about it, but that's really where it started because, I mean, that was an incredible case. And it was all over the news, if you remember. During that time.
I do. And, but was it in Capitol Hill in the bars and such? Were everybody talking about the inside scoop?
Yeah. I mean, people know. We used to joke about the next death, the next person who was going to be found suicided, jumping off a bridge, finding dead, There were a lot more deaths in D.C. during that time that just weren't reported. There were people getting greased 2 or 3 a year. And so people knew. We were in the law school. We knew. We joked about it. People just didn't talk about it. They knew it. It was kind of like you survive on that information. So people wanted to know, but they didn't really. You just kind of played the game.
Yeah.
So I think, Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, there are stories you don't want to get called a troublemaker, you know? That's
Right.
kind of one of the things.
Well,
And if you go along with the program, everything's fine. You earn your bones. Like Arlen Specter earned his bones
boy,
during
did
the
he.
Kennedy assassination. Yeah. So he was fine for the rest of his life. Interesting story. When I was delivering all that stuff, the addendum to the Star Report, I went into Arlen Specter's office and I went to all their offices. So you kind of just see what these guys, how they operate. Arlen Specter had this kind of like brag picture framed things with all the famous people he was friends of, but they were smaller and they went almost all the way down to the floor, like behind the chairs. Like he could not put up enough pictures of himself with famous people. There wasn't enough wall space. So it was off the charts. Like you just saw that vanity there, of that element of vanity. And he was one of those people who just went with the story. So he was the establishment just probably rubber stamped his career from right there. Done. Get up there, go to the car and tell the single bullet theory for everybody. You're done. So I didn't go that route. So that was I think that in a lot of I didn't lose my integrity, but I definitely lost opportunities and things like that. If you get along to go along, it's a lot easier in the world. I mean,
it is, but it almost seems like they block integrity out. I mean, I work in an industry. I've been in substance abuse for years, and there's so much money in that industry now that you're having the big fish swallow the small. It's the corporatization of the industry.
wow. Amazing.
And what you see is something not unlike Hollywood or fraternities, where the people at the top really engage in highly unethical behavior. And now, because you and I were at the party together, we got the goods on each other. And therefore, the person with integrity is he's not going to get invited to the boardroom. He's a liability.
Right. He's a danger. He's a threat.
Yeah. And
he's a threat of exposing us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually not that uncommon in a lot of corporate environments. A lot of different, the farther you get up, there's a weird, we're running this and the outsider can't get in. So the guy who wants to change this whole system or do the right thing is working against my interest. Mm-hmm. Isn't that a definition of DC? Like the public who wants to come in and change it is really a threat to those people, life or death threat, because they can't continue with their corruption. Like I want term limits. Like what is it? 85% of the country wants term limits. Nobody in those old geezers like Biden, 81 million votes, Yeah. Do you know how many votes Obama got in the 2012 election?
I don't.
65 million. Do you know how many Biden got in the 2020 election?
How many?
81 million.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Right. Sure. I mean, you go with the program. Those people who went with the program, they're all in those high kind of, at the top of these administrative bodies, huge bodies. They don't complain. Have you seen anybody from Washington really? I mean, maybe people who lost, but the other guys, this is all above board, baby. 81 million. He's much more popular than Obama. Probably one of the most popular presidents in our lifetimes.
Well, that leaves us with this kind of thing about, the role of the media in all this. And I find myself wondering a lot now, podcasts like your own and similar podcasts and all this sort of alternative news, there's really no way of kind of calibrating the impact it's having because it's completely shut down by the MSM. So from where you sit, do you have a sense that, I hate to use a term like awakening, but do you have a sense that something's rippling through the America that is like an awakening?
I think so. Something like that. I think I think that the corporate media has discredited itself so much, and the people are getting something that's more edifying and satisfying from the alternate. And I think the example is really Joe Rogan broke the whole narrative with 2 interviews, that guy Malone and McCullough. Yeah. And those interviews were off the charts. I mean, it's unparalleled. Like if CNN got 50 million views on one of their shows, it would be like they would have gotten every award on earth, right? Whatever
Right.
award it was. But Joe Rogan had 50 million views to this Malone videos. That's what they tell me. He got nothing, but that's where people are going. They're
Right.
going towards that alternate. They want to be challenged. They want, I mean, like,
And that would probably explain the success of your podcast.
I think in part, no question. I think in part. I mean, I'm not even close to I mean, that guy is a
No,
behemoth. Yeah, he's a colossus.
he kind of hit the zeitgeist in a way that a lot of other research, the UFC, the age, the
Comedians, yeah.
comedian, hanging with Mike Tyson, can talk psychedelics from experience. He hits it perfectly. Not like us old guys in our 50s.
I think he's 52. I mean, he ain't no young.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think he's that young. He have you ever heard, do you know he kind of came up he was friends with Jan Irvin. Do you know who Jan Irvin is?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's Gnostic Media. Have you ever heard of Gnostic
Oh,
Media?
yeah, no, I know about that. Yeah,
So
sure.
they came up together, but I mean, that was, and Jan is like a psychonaut too, and Joe Rogan is too, right? So I think they came, but I think Rogan learned from some of the mistakes that some of these other guys were making. So he's clever. He's very, I think I have to give him credit. I've criticized him on certain stuff. He's had so many people on his show who are 1 degree of separation with Epstein and not asked him any questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had Epstein's like chef. He had this guy who literally cooked for Epstein and Maxwell. He's talking to this guy's from my favorite steakhouse. Barry, I think was his name. This guy's from my.
What did they talk? Food?
Yeah, they just talked about food. It was incredible. He would be like sitting across from like, I don't know, Robert Maxwell or something, and just talking about boating all day. Like,
Yeah.
just like, dude, this is so important. What was it like being with Epstein? What did he like to eat? Who did you see? Where did you go?
Right.
Nothing. Have you been to the island? What did you see?
Yeah.
Who did he hang out with?
Yeah.
Nothing. So important.
You signed some closure forms.
It's interesting because that whole, I mean, you don't know much about the perpetrators, right? You have the victims, you've got Epstein and Maxwell, but who their clients were is
oh no, that's right,
not overt. Yeah.
And with the death of Brunel, that's going to be even harder to find.
Yeah, I would be sweating if I was Maxwell. If I was Ghislaine Maxwell, I'd be sweating every day. That somebody wants that cleaned up, I can assure you.
So one thing
I was told, let me tell you another funny story is somebody told me this. I talked to a lot of people, but somebody told me that they had friends who were up in the hills of Hollywood, and there were these 2 parties taking place. People were celebrating and having fun. And then Epstein was found dead that morning. And he thought that he was going to these houses that they knew Epstein was going to be killed, and they were partying in advance before the notification. Is that amazing?
Yeah, that's really amazing.
It's believable, but it is amazing.
I often wonder if he just had so much blackmail and intel that killing him would just be a sigh of relief for a lot of the elite.
No doubt.
And
dude, there were tons of people.
The FBI came and took away the computers everywhere from Paris to New Mexico, and there you go.
Well, that safe had pre-opened evidence, so it had gone to the FBI and then had been returned. That's what I think had happened. And I mean, just Gates himself was heavily tied in with Epstein, so that was probably part of his divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So he was probably very satisfied when that news came through. I mean, you can't impute a lot of stuff to people. Like, I don't have the evidence, but you're right. There were lots of people, thousands and thousands of people who sided with it. There were very nervous men who were sitting at the table with their wives and kids with just sweat pouring down on their foreheads and their, rivulets, like it's Airplane, the movie. Like, I hope my name never comes out because they get divorced. The wife walks away with half the money and the kids are like, "What are you doing, Dad? Where were you hanging out on this plane for?" There were so many people involved, man. There were so many people involved.
So
it was really the culture. Yeah.
I'm expecting you get a lot of intel that you can never talk about.
I definitely have some.
So one thing I'd just like to touch on, just out of appreciation before we're done, is one of my favorite interviews was with J. Michael Bennett, Doc Future,
mm-hmm.
and really unpacking the way a lot of these organizations use the church as a front and cover, and I just feel like giving him an audience was really the right thing to do.
He got in a lot of heat from the Christian community for criticizing them, because Liberty University is a cash cow. And the guy who runs that is not, he just says, I'm not a Christian. I think he came out and said,
did he really?
Like he's not. Yeah, he said something to that effect. I'm not a believer or something. And he was the guy with the pool boy. So Mike Bennett's critique would be right in line with the Lord Jesus Christ, 100%, because these guys adhere to the letter of the law, to my opinion. But yeah, interestingly, he's one of the first persons who interviewed me when I came out with Prophet of Evil, and I was a nobody. I had no experience. Yeah. So you can go back. I think I put it up on my website, 2010 interview, and that solidifies me in time that I wrote that book at that time, because the preceding book was based on my research. But I got to give him credit, kudos for him for interviewing me, because I was printing out my book on like a typewriter or something. It was really sad. I didn't know much, I didn't know what I was doing.
But he's intrepid. I mean, he'll call out Billy Graham. The business about the Reverend Moon writing a check to save Liberty University, that just blew the top of my head off. And then, going after, figures like Aldous Huxley and his relationship to Bill Wilson and all that. I mean, he's just doing it. So
he really is. He's a great researcher. And he was in the movie about the Georgia Guidestones too. You should check that out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he's also buddies with Steven Snyder. Yeah.
Steven Snyder, Chris Pinto. Chris Pinto was a good director of really kind of non-corporatized documentaries. But yeah, he's been around. He's interviewed some interesting guys too. I think his whole repository of Dr. Future somewhere online, because I downloaded my interview with him there. But I'm proud of those interviews. Yeah, that book. What was the name of his book? It was Two Masters.
Two Masters, Two Gospels.
Two Masters, Two Gospels.
And I think he's coming out with a second volume. Well, that's volume 1 anyway. So
great research. Yeah.
Well, William, this has been great. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. I hope your audience finds it a little interesting, because you're kind of the man behind the curtain a lot of times interviewing. So
it is, it's nice to kind of flip it around. I was the one interviewed for like 8 years. So I kind of learned certain things. So I just keep my mouth shut and let the guests talk, because, it works. It's simple. I don't have to do that much. Yeah, well, I do try to be prepared to read the book, but
and I really appreciate that too, because I hate listening to an interview when it becomes obvious that the interviewer knows nothing about it.
Yeah. The thing is that we've lost out. One of the reasons these books is like we've lost out on that deeper, and I think it's the corporate media has really shaped us, and the television, kind of deeper understanding. So a lot of my guests really know their subject well. So you're getting an expert or close to an expert on so many of the subjects. So it's so worthwhile, if you can, to just try to get those understandings. The other thing, it's like I've made just as a host so many ties and connections that I never would have seen before. And just simple research, not like uncovering a lost document or a secret society document or something like that.
Oh yeah. When you said to David Livingston, "You're blowing my mind," I'm like, oh shit, then I better read this.
That's good. Yeah. His research is incredible. I mean, that's a great book. It's really, all of his books are excellent.
Yeah.
Was it The Illuminati, 3,000 Years? I can't remember all the titles, but I think that's what I'm trying to do, is try to get people back to, and I think that the technology has done it to us. So it's not just the TV, it's just being on your phone or, just small little snippets of information, even Twitter.
Yeah. But Twitter what's interesting is I think the podcast is sort of the most intimate medium, and more so than even the visual, because you're taking it in, it kind of frees you up with your imagination. And so what you're kind of doing, which is really interesting, is you're taking the Gutenberg guy, the guy who wrote the book, and you're bringing it into this new medium. So you're sort of, bringing them together. And the long form, generally speaking, you're fairly long form. That really helps too. So it's kind of like binge listening or something. And that's the other thing about William. I don't know if you know this, but William Ramsey Investigates, you can binge listen. So if I'm driving 5 hours, I can just scroll, and that's really wonderful.
And I think that's kind of a cool thing, is that it's always there, so you can reference it. But,
especially if you're interviewing somebody from a few years before.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still. Then my intent is to keep those kind of evergreen. So I will use times and dates, but I've shied away with just being reactive to media events. I think a lot of other people do that, is one reason why.
Yeah.
But the other is because oftentimes they're one and done. You only listen, you can only listen to them within the first week. And then you're like, why would I listen to it anymore? So I've kind of shaped my interviews, kind of try to be referential, permanently referential, and I'm still cycling through some of the old ones too.
Do you put out a certain amount of material a week, or is it very long?
I don't have a set thing. I just moved to Spotify, a Spotify company called Megaphone. So I left Spreaker. So that was interesting. And now, if they want, certain advertisers will want you to drop things at a certain time so they know how their advertisement goes through. So if that happens, I probably could do that. Like right now, I'm not really that corporately, structured to like have a corporation really go, oh, this is great. Maybe Audible or something like that. But I don't have a set time. So I really is dependent upon whether my time I can have the interview and then how many people want to interview. But as I've gotten bigger, more people say yes. Yeah. But the funny thing is that some people think, like I was just complaining about this on Twitter or on my social media. Some people think that I'm an occultist when I've been exposing occultists and occultism for like 12 years. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, I've been railing against Crowley. I'm probably the biggest anti-Crowley voice out there. And people come across me and they look at the cover of my book and they go, oh, yeah. For me, I had a sophisticated guy who wrote 15 books was telling me that, like, I'm a Presbyterian. I go to church. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, I'm going to bleed from my ears. Like, where have you been? Like, and I think that's kind of like in the environment that I'm in. I'm totally in the alternate media. I never tried to like go to a magazine or, try to get into anything corporate. I've never, ever. And the only thing was trying my first book. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some people who are in that environment, they don't know squat about like what I've done. But there's 100. I mean, my podcast has 500 hours, but there's tons of other interviews out there in the ether where I've interviewed that aren't on, like, they're on Vinny Eastwood or some of these other ones. They're just around. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Well, sir, keep up the good work, and we will. I would like to do this again someday.
Likewise, anytime. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Let's stop this.